Good evening, Trump family. Welcome to Open Source News. Have a good night, everyone, and God bless you. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on that notifications bell so you don't miss a thing. Alright, the following is a collection of news from Patriots. Let's get into the news this Saturday. Let's leave behind the far left woke policies of imploding, drug infested Antifa run cities like Portland, and redraw our boundaries around a great conservative state like Idaho. And so an organization called Move Oregon's Border put forward the idea of holding a number of referenda throughout Oregon's far more conservative counties to secede from Oregon and join up with Idaho. On May 18, 2021, 5 counties held a referendum to secede, and to the shock of many, all 5 counties voted to secede from Oregon. Some of the measures passed by over 60% of the vote. Since then, Mike Stream has absolutely exploded in popularity. Thus far, upwards of 11 counties in the state of Oregon have passed referendums to join their neighboring red state, Idaho, which is now being dubbed the Greater Idaho Movement. Several more counties are scheduled to hold similar votes, and all told nearly 50% of Oregon's counties are prepared to leave and join up with Idaho. If this session were actually implemented, that would mean that 3/4 of the landmass of the state of Oregon would be emancipated from the imploding city of Portland, which in turn would make Idaho the 3rd largest state in the union in terms of landmass. Now, the logic for this is rather simple. Back in November, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek won re-election by nearly 4 points, beating out Republican Christine Draza. Now you would think, okay, that's a pretty close race. 4 points. Yeah, that's respectable. But take a look at the Oregon governor election results map. It's virtually all red. The Democrat Tina Kotek won re-election despite having lost 29 of Oregon's 36 counties. More than half of those counties, nearly 20 in all, voted against the Democrat by a margin of nearly 40 to 50 points. In fact, her 68,000 vote margin of victory came exclusively from the 192,000 margin of victory in a single county, Multnomah County, which of course contains the imploding, failed city of Portland, and Multnomah County were excluded. The Republican would have won the race by 10 points. This is the recipe for intense disenfranchisement among the vast majority of Oregon's rural counties who don't want to be living under the political conditions imposed on them by a single cosmopolitan county. It's like forcing Alabama to live under a San Francisco regime. And so the rural folks are rebelling, and it seems to be working. The Idaho legislature just voted in favor of the bill that would move the Oregon and Idaho border westward to create a Greater Idaho. The bill authorizes Idaho legislators to present a proposal to Oregon politicians about relocating the border to the Cascade Mountain Range, which would end up incorporating over 60% of Oregon's landmass in Idaho. So the Idaho legislature looks like they're ready to do this. So what about Oregon's legislature? Are they prepared to allow so much of their state to secede? Well, the answer to that is going to shock you. How much money do you think you would save in interest payments if you could pay off your mortgage in 5 to 7 years without any change in your current income? You're that right, 5 to 7 years? Well, amazing is just a click away. You've got to click on the link below and visit Replace Your Mortgage, featuring the one and only Michael Lush. Michael showing Patriots by the 1000s how you can build your own personal parallel economy, so you're no longer dependent on woke businesses without worrying about your financial future. Check him out. Click on that link below and book a free consultation call with Michael. He's one of us. He's a patriot, and he's here to serve you. This is Matt McCall, spokesperson for the Greater Idaho Movement, talking about a bill that was just introduced in the Oregon Senate that would indeed begin talks with the Idaho legislature on adjusting the border. Everyone listen to this. Quote, "We just spoke with Senate President Rob Wagner, and he says this bill probably will not go anywhere. But it does indicate that the people in the western part of the state do need to talk to the folks in the eastern part of the state and take their concerns seriously. So what do you say about that reaction to your bill?" Well, we would hope so. Our bill, the process for moving a border in any border can be moved. Like I mentioned, it's an imaginary line. A border is a tool for the betterment of people, so any border can be moved. And in fact, Oregon and Washington slightly moved their border in 1958. It needed to be shored up where exactly it was in the Columbia River. So the process is for 2 states to get together. And it's called an interstate compact, and they decide where the border is. Doesn't make sense. It would make more sense to put it here. Those two states, if they agree, then they write up an interstate compact, a contract, but where that would go, and all the details that would go with that. It would go to the US Congress and get signed off. So where we're at now, we've been spending the last 2 years going to Eastern Oregon counties and asking voters directly, do you want your elected leaders to look into this? And what we're seeing is when we actually ask voters, do you want to look into moving the border? Do you want to look into changing state-level governance? Voters are saying yes, and they're saying yes, pretty overwhelmingly. Our votes out here in Eastern Oregon aren't close. They're not 5,149. We're winning 6,139 and 5,941. People want this solution to be looked at by our leaders. So Senator Linthicum has introduced a bill in the state Senate, and that bill is basically asking the Idaho legislature to begin talks, and we have a bill in the Idaho legislature that's ready to be introduced as well, inviting Oregon to begin talks. So we would ask Senate President Wagner to move that bill forward, that people in Eastern Oregon are asking our elected leaders to look at what it would mean to change the border and change their state government and governance, and we would ask Senate President Wagner to move that bill forward. Let's have this conversation. Let's hear the people out and advocate for what they want. Okay, folks, so there you have it. I mean, this thing really is happening. There is real momentum to change Oregon's borders, largely because they become functionally obsolete. Functional obsolescence occurs when something simply no longer serves the function for which it was originally designed. I mean, take for example, the way a bridge can become functionally obsolete when it becomes too narrow, too weak to support the types of new vehicles people are driving. Now, functional obsolescence isn't just relevant for bridges or building codes for that matter. It can also apply to state borders that no longer represent the values and interests of the residents. And that's precisely why what's happening in Oregon is, and again, this is actually happening from the Mid-Atlantic to the Pacific Northwest rural counties, and some of the bluest of blue states have taken steps to redraw state lines in order to either join up with a neighboring red state or to form their own new state. In California, San Bernardino County, one of their largest counties, 2 million people, has directed local officials to study the possibility of secession from their state. Eastern Washington counties are considering comparable measures, and perhaps most radically, them all. The Republican Party of Texas recently passed a resolution in their party platform that calls for a referendum vote on whether to secede from the United States in a so-called Texas referendum named after Brexit. In fact, USA Today fairly recently noted that the U.S. is experiencing nothing less than what they're calling secession fever. And for obvious reasons. They were well articulated by the Greater Idaho movement. There more and more Americans refuse to live under regimes that don't just ignore their values, but actively insult them, spin on them, and they've had it. They want their values of faith, family, and freedom honored and revered. And if imploding cities like Portland want to embrace socially suicidal woke values, then go right ahead, no one's stopping you. But if more and more counties want to remove themselves from those woke values, then there should be no one stopping them as well. Interstate secession is a win-win. And that's why we may indeed be seeing an extraordinary political makeover surging throughout our nation in the very near future. And then some significant news: Don Lemon is getting fired from CNN eventually. CNN's Don Lemon regrets saying Nikki Haley passed her prime. Well, imagine if Trump said that. Pelosi or AOC were past their prime. Oh, my God, it would be the end of the world. Could you imagine if a Fox News contributor or host stated that anyone on the Democratic Party side was past her prime? Okay. You would never hear the end of it. And so CNN is slowly it. Let's just put it this way. Apparently he wants to get fired. So the New York Post and others reported twice about Don Lemon getting into these heated verbal altercations with CO hosts. Okay, that usually happens when they're on their way out. Okay. You heard of this type of thing, like every so often taking place with former colleagues of Don Lemon, who aren't there anymore. Okay. There would be scandal or controversy or some kind of issue, whether it was Chris Cuomo, pertaining to his brother Andrew Cuomo, or Brian Stelter. Slowly you would get this stream of information, negative press regarding the co-host. So now it's only a matter of time. We'll read this CNN as Don Lemon regrets saying Nikki Haley, Pastor Brian, at a certain point, you're going to get at certain points, you're going to get executives at CNN saying, okay, Even if he's going after Trump or Republicans or a conservative Republican, running for president like Nikki Haley, even if he's doing that, he's still alienating a very important demographic for any cable station. He's alienating female viewers. See, this is the type of thing that The View would just obsess over if it was a Republican stating this or if a conservative pundit are conservative, and here's the hypocrisy on display. That's where the absolute hypocrisy is that, okay, so it's kind of like a slow motion. He's leaving the cable station in slow motion. That's going to take place. It's just a matter of when. And we can look right here. Don Lemon startled some colleagues. Go ahead. And this is an Associated Press article. Don Lemon startled some colleagues on CNN Morning Show Thursday with his implication that Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley was past her prime as 51. Okay, so there you go. Lemon, again, was discussing Haley's suggestion a day earlier. The politicians over 75 should be subject to mandatory. So again, you're looking at a Democrat or a liberal pundit trying desperately to defend Biden, who routinely slurs his speech. And, says things that nobody else would say, but his speech pattern or his words are swept under the rug. That's just the way he is. He is the salt of the earth person Biden, so he can make things up and, speak in tongues. So that's what Nikki Haley was after, or that's what Nikki Haley was talking about, whether the president is not mashed potato brains and actually, competent from a mental perspective. And so everyone knows the reality of the situation. But Don Lemon, going to bat for Biden, said, well, you know what? Let's see who's past their prime. And Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. I'm just saying what the facts are. So what are the facts? Nobody knows what the facts are. The being 51 years old is not old at all. Okay. I think that Don Lemon is close to 51. So are approaching 51. So you look and it's like he's just desperate to defend Biden like they all are. And when you're defending Biden, oftentimes you have to go into the realm of the absurd. He will be the last remnant of CNN apoplectic coverage of Trump to leave. I'm just typing on my phone. How old is Don Lemon? Don Lemon is 56 years old. Okay, he looks fantastic, by the way, for 56, but maybe there's a lot of makeup. Who knows? But he does look very good. But oh, so is he past his crime? Anderson Cooper, and I thought he was older than Donald Lemon, as 55 years old. Chris Cuomo is 52 years old. Okay, Brian Stelter is 37, he looks older. Anyway, the point is, Nikki Haley is younger. Nikki Haley is younger than Don Lemon. So is Don Lemon past his prime, a 56? I don't understand that. And again, they're eventually going to part ways with him. It's pretty unbelievable that he's able to get away with this. He won't be, because this will be the final nail in the coffin. Eventually, you're going to get an executive that says, look, the person in question, Don Lemon, is no longer in a political climate where he can just say anything as long as it hurts Trump. He is now seriously offending women. This is now not even an example of hypocrisy, because although it is, you wouldn't even say this in the context even before Trump and media hysteria. You wouldn't say that a woman is past her prime? Because she's 50. Okay, you wouldn't say really anyone's past their prime. So, and then he's like, look it up. So you're not talking about, Einstein. Here, you're talking about somebody who is a personality. He's a personality. So if he's a liberal personality, he can get away with saying anything. Just like when Biden was Charlemagne, the god, he can get away with saying almost anything. The problem, however, is that they moved him from his primetime segment, his prime spot regarding politics, and now he is in the morning. And he's been getting into arguments with CO hosts. And so it's just a matter of time, almost certainly weeks to months, because they want to slowly remake or rebrand CNN as less apoplectic and hysterical towards Trump, which it's still not even. I can see a tiny shift towards a less mania against Orange Man. But, and I'm not saying this to be politically correct, because I don't really like this vapid emphasis on policing speech. Because a lot of times, like if Don Lemon was talking about a female athlete, they'll be different. It would still be offensive to a lot of people, but it wouldn't be actually an offensive statement if he was talking about an athlete. But he's talking about a politician. Ladies and gentlemen, give me your thoughts below. And hit subscribe right now.